Hello and good evening, and welcome to our briefing about St Mary's. I'm Councillor Andrew Parry, and I'm Dorset Council's Cabinet Member responsible for Children's Services and Education. On our call this evening, we are joined by a number of key officers and the leader of the Council, Councillor Spencer Flower. Councillor Flower is leading the cross-party group that is responsible for the political oversight of the delivery of St Mary's. We're also joined by the Council's Chief Executive Officer, Matt Prosser, who is responsible for the project board, Vic Vilmer, who is the project director, and Teresa Levy, who I know many of you have already had the opportunity to meet, as our Director for Children's Services. Can I thank you for taking the time to join us this evening? We hope the presentation that we will be showing you is informative. We hope that it will enable you to want to ask questions of us, because we're very keen to be in a position to assist in answering those questions wherever we possibly can. I know that some of you have had the opportunity to be involved in our consultation, and others will want to take the opportunity afterwards, seeing the presentation today, to offer your response in the consultation process going forward. I'll now hand over to Matt Prosser.
Thanks very much indeed, Councillor Parry. That's a great introduction. Thank you. And I'm going to do perhaps a little bit of a boring intro just to set out a little bit about why we're doing what we're doing in terms of the consultation and how we're going about that before I hand over to Teresa, who can talk you through what we've actually bought at the St Mary's site in Shaftesbury. So this purchase has come from our council's capital budget, and if subject to the consultation, the preferred option that we have is taken forward, it could become part of a much larger capital programme and strategy for the development of schools in Dorset and making sure we've got the right provision to support our children with special educational needs and disabilities. The key for us would be that with existing facilities on the site, it could accelerate that strategy of provision. I hope that would be something that you would support. Before I do that, however, I need to set out why we need to consult before taking a decision about the use of the site. Because some people have asked us that question. Now you bought it, why do you actually need to consult? Because we're a local council, we've got certain legal obligations on us that mean that we have to do certain things in certain ways. And one of those is something called best value. And so that means that we have a duty to consult users, residents and interest groups in Dorset before making a final decision about how we might change the way we deliver a service. In this case, it would be an education service. This means that Dorset Council can have a preferred option, but we've got to keep our minds open and allow space to have regard to consultees' other views. And because this site in St Mary's is such a big one, as you'll see through this presentation, it could well be that our preferred option could also sit alongside other uses of the site. And that's something we're really keen to hear from people through this consultation process. So we need to make sure that we don't create the impression that our minds are made up. Otherwise, the consultation process would be challenged as not being meaningful or genuine. And so we really are here to listen to the questions that you have, and then hopefully you'll put the responses through the consultation process. That's why we've set out a range of potential and other alternative options for use of the St Mary's site for you to express your views upon. As I say, the council has its duty to pay due regard to the consultation feedback, but it doesn't involve an obligation to follow the final suggestions, and Dorset must always take into account relevant considerations such as value for money, the service needs, council's existing policies and other considerations. I hope that was helpful. But let me first of all start this evening by thanking you for taking some time out to listen to what we've got to tell you, and to hand over to Teresa Levy, who will take you through what is actually on St Mary's site if you're not aware already. Thanks, Teresa.
Good evening, everybody, and thank you for taking time out in what's probably a bit of a busy tea time or something. So thank you for doing that. That's really helpful, and we want to have as many opportunities as we can to talk to you about our plans for the children of Dorset. This broadcast is being recorded and will be able to be shared later, and there is a Q&A bar available for you to post any of your questions. And as always, there really are no silly questions. This is a very intricate, exciting, I think, and important development for Dorset Council and for the people, children and families of Dorset. So please do bring forward any questions that you have, and we'll do our very best to answer them this evening. So exactly as you can see there, hopefully on this slideshow, if you can see things on screen, or I'll describe to people just in case you can't. This is a very large site just into Wiltshire. So it's called St Mary's Shaftesbury, but it's just into the borders of Wiltshire there. And so Wiltshire are the planning authority and the local authority for council tax, etc. But this is a great opportunity for us to, with our preference of consultation, to provide, in support of what's already an outstanding offer from our existing special schools, more opportunity for more children in Dorset to have some really fantastic outcomes and have good access to a range of education and learning opportunities in this part of the county. Next slide, please. So it's the aerial photographs often make it seem as if it's a very old property that we bought, but it's important really to note that many parts of the building are actually large and well equipped and quite modern. They are still absolutely kitted out as schools and as schoolrooms. The children left in March really intending to come back, and you'll know from the press, no doubt, that the property went into the hands of the receiver, and therefore many of the parts of the accommodation that have been purchased, including science laboratories, art blocks, music blocks, language blocks, conference facilities, medical centres and libraries, are still fully equipped and ready to be used really from tomorrow. Not that we're going to be doing it from tomorrow. We will be continuing to consult until at the end of March and making a decision at Cabinet about future usage at the end of April. On site there is also a sports hall, an indoor swimming pool, a range of playing fields and sports pitches, which if you're a local resident you may have got some familiarity with, because certainly there has been some previous usage of some of those facilities. Next slide, please. So these are the pictures of some of the things as we go through. Just to click through if we could, please, that would be great, Mike, because we can then see the main halls. Some of the halls are older, but then going through again, some of the classrooms, as you can see, these are very present photographs. So these are absolutely up-to-date photographs of the quality and condition of the site at the present time. Really quite modern, quite well equipped. Lots of disability access already, although of course that will be part of what we'll be looking at in terms of our future planning, and lots of good usable spaces. And the swimming pool, as I've described. Some of the external buildings are very distinct from the main schoolhouse and may have other uses and purposes as we're consulting on. There is a chapel on site. The consecrated items from the chapel have been rehomed to their original Catholic nuns, but it remains a chapel at the present time. And lots of outdoor space, really important, a good strong feel around the building of space and warmth and positivity, and lots of opportunities around some of that. So as I've said, it is just into Wiltshire, closest to Shaftesbury, along the A30. So we've purchased those premises because we have a particular need, and I'm going to hand over in a minute to Vic Verma to talk you through what that need is for school places to join the outstanding provision we already have in Dorset. Vic.
Thank you, Teresa, and good evening, everybody. So if you look at the data there over the last 5-6 years, the number of children and young people within education, health and care plan since the reforms was less than 1,500, has grown to around 3,000 children. Now, many of those children and young people would be supported in mainstream education, but there are that fewer number who absolutely need more specialist provision, and that's where this fits in. The primary needs of the kinds of children and young people where we've seen that growth has been around children and young people with ASD, with speech and language needs, and with social emotional mental health needs, and that's where we've really seen that pressure in the education service. And if we come on to the next slide, we have fantastic special schools, excellent special schools in Dorset, but they are oversubscribed, and increasing numbers of our children and young people are travelling further away and to attend independent provision. Of course, we believe that those children and young people should be educated closer to home in high quality local provision. And just as an example, 250 children have been in independent provision in 2021, whereas in 2015 it was only around 100 children and young people. So we've seen that growth and that pressure which our special schools have struggled to accommodate. And this has financial implications. Independent provision is very costly in comparison to our own excellent provision in our special schools. So on average, independent provision, whilst there's a range, can cost on average £60,000 per year. That same provision in our local special schools is approximately £22,000. So you can see the financial implication of that. And costs have grown by around £6.7 million in 2015 to a more recent figure of approximately £14 million. So our preferred option through this consultation, and that we've stated in the paperwork that you'll have seen, is to create a new special educational needs school so that we can offer more of that high quality provision that you see in our existing special schools for more of our children and young people. And as set out in our children and young people's plan, we are very ambitious for our SEND families. We set out an aim to have the best education for all, which you can find on our children's plan. And we feel that this facility, this school, could really help us both meet that growing need, but also deliver really high quality provision and reduce costs in using independent provision. The alternatives that the council has been open to considering through the consultation have included some of the ideas there. So a respite centre for care, a training and conferencing suite, of which there are some facilities on the site already, an innovation centre for a startup business, and other ideas, which there'll be a question in the survey that you may have seen about other ideas that the public may want to bring forward. And I'll hand back to Matt for the next part.
Brilliant. Thanks very much indeed, Vic. It's really, really helpful. So as you've heard, the council is open to other uses of the site, as I mentioned at the beginning of the briefing, and has looked at these other options, but is open to other suggestions that the consultation may reveal. So you might have some other thoughts about how we could use the site over and above the preferred option that the council has put forward. So I'm going to finish now by saying, obviously, the survey is open, and we're grateful to lots and lots of people who've already given us responses. We've had several hundred responses already, and so I'm going to look now to the live Q&A, and we've got at least one question in there. So I'm going to pose that, and I'll try and direct these to the best people on the panel to answer them. So not forgetting, we've got Spencer Flower, the leader of the council, and Councillor Andrew Parry, the executive, the portfolio holder for Children's Services. We've got Teresa Levy, the executive director for children, and also Vic Verman, the project director. So I've got a question here. Is there space for animals as part of animal assisted therapies for children and young people? I'm going to look to Teresa for that one.
Thank you, Matt, and thanks for the question. And we've had some previously posted questions as well before this evening started, so we'll look forward to taking you through those too. As you'll have seen, the site has got a huge wealth of opportunities, and one of the things that we know is that our families will work with us to help us to think about the range of therapeutic and curriculum opportunities that would be great for their children and their young people. And we're really keen, particularly in the 16+ age range, to think about opportunities for learning, independence, employment, experience and skill acquisition. We know that that readiness for adulthood, that ready and steady state is an area that we want to be able to support your young people better in, and be able to offer a range of things that might help them with that. And it may well be that absolutely some of the areas of support there could be around agriculture, food production, animal care, etc. We know the strength of that from other work that goes on around the county. So really open to all of those opportunities as well. Yeah, and look forward to seeing some of those thoughts coming through.
Great, It's great stuff. Thanks very much, Teresa. So we've got another question here that was submitted in advance. What age children would the school be for?
Matt, I'm more than happy to pick that one up. Mark Blackman, I'm the Corporate Director for Education and Learning for Dorset Council. We're looking predominantly at secondary age children for our ideal age range at the start, but that's of course subject to consultation, and we'd want to hear from the community about other alternatives as well.
Brilliant. Thanks very much indeed, Mark. The questions are now coming in thick and fast. So I've got a question here submitted in advance again. Would children from Wiltshire go to the school too? And that might be a good one for you, Mark, as well.
More than happy to pick that one up, yes. We have had conversations with our neighbours in Wiltshire and in other counties, and what we would want to be able to do was to look at the needs of children, to be sympathetic to those. I think the concept of a resource for Dorset children comes first, but if we have spare capacity and we're able to use that in the right way, then we would certainly be able to have a conversation with our neighbouring counties.
Great stuff. Thanks, Mark. And I've got the next question comes from Andy. Andy, really, thanks very much for your question. Will plans consider post-19 education? I don't know whether I want to say that one. Teresa's coming in.
Yep, that's great. Thank you. Thanks, Matt. So yeah, so we're really. Oh, sorry, just wait a second. Thank you. Yeah, thank you for the question. So the issues around age is absolutely about to consult upon the age range. We know that we have a need from 4 to 19 and even higher than that. I'm really keen to look at the opportunities about young adults and about some of the real readiness for learning and work that can look into that. So yeah, really strongly encourage people to give your best consultation feedback on that whole age range. You know, we know we have a need from 4 to 25 and really keen to look at that. Thank you.
Great stuff. Thanks very much, Teresa. So we've got a slightly longer question now. What kind of SEN are you proposing to cater for? My son is academically able and in year 6, but has ASD and ADHD, and there is nowhere in county for him, given mainstream have said they can't meet his need. My only option is an hour and a half away, an independent school costing over £60,000. Will St Mary's be able to support children like him? That's quite a specific question, but Mark or Teresa might be able to give their initial response.
Happy to come back on that one, Matt. Thank you. Absolutely, that is exactly the kind of conversation that we want to have. So we do appreciate that right across our county we need good quality provision for all kinds of children in different places and spaces. We don't want to be exporting our children to other counties or into independent provision. We're looking at our children being educated by our schools in Dorset, and so potentially yes, that's exactly the sorts of conversation we're having. We're not going to pin down exactly what type of particular need would be the most appropriate for this site. While we're in the consultation, we're going to be listening really carefully and working with our existing special schools to work out the right mix across the county of specialisms in different places, and make sure that wherever you live in Dorset you have access to high quality facilities without having to travel huge distances.
Brilliant. Thanks very much indeed. So I've got a question coming in. Vic, did you want to come in and give a response?
Yes, I was just going to add, in particular, I think we know we have pressures in autism spectrum disorder, so in line with the questioner's question, primary need is that particular primary need is an area of pressure for us, alongside speech and language and social and emotional mental health. So those are the kinds of areas, but as Mark said, we need to see what comes through from the consultation, but we do have very good data on our cohort and the demographic of children and young people with an EHCP.
Great stuff. Thanks very much indeed, Vic. So I'm just going back up the list of the questions to check we don't miss any here. So I've got one perhaps from somebody who's more local. Says there are no sports facilities in Shaftesbury and nearby villages. Will people be able to use the pool, gym, sports pitches and courts? And we're well aware that there are some community groups who are accessing those facilities on site. Clearly we've got to decide what our final option is for the use of the site and make sure that any other access to that is complementary to that process. One of the other challenges is that some of those facilities are incredibly expensive to run. So, of course, Dorset Council's got to look at it in the context of what it can afford to do once we've decided on the final solution. But we are making contact with those groups who have previously used those facilities and obviously would want to continue to use them in the future. And if you are local, then that's something that we'd be like to hear from you in terms of your responses to the consultation process. I've got another question that says, who's going to run the school? If that's our final option. Teresa, do you want to take that one?
Thank you, Matt. So along with the broader consultation, we're obviously looking at a range of opportunities to have the school run by suitably experienced people. We haven't yet determined what kind of model that might be. It's part of our consultation arrangements. But what you can be sure of is that our ambition to see this as a centre of absolute excellence is that we will be engaging with partners across the board to make sure that the people who run it, in whatever configuration we run it, whether it's as part of an independent school with a range of partners, a trustee board, etc., all of those things are being looked at, and we're taking good advice on that to make sure that we've got the best people running the school in its complexity, because it is going to be complex. As I mean, some of the questions that are coming through now are really helpful around, is it going to have a residential option? So if I might just take that one as well, Matt, if that's okay.
Please do.
It's possible, it's very possible on site that that's the right thing to do, and it's very possible that for some of your children and young people that's also the right thing for them. So as we get through this consultation and we begin to work out just who are the children, young people and families that we want to be making available, the site available to, we'll be able to work out whether that also requires a residential option. It's also possible that within other parts of the site, because it is a very large site, 70 odd acres, and lots of parts of it are distinct, that we could have residential provision there that isn't wholly connected to the school, or it's certainly not wholly consumed by it. So yes is the answer, that's possible, and we're looking at that both for children and potentially young people and readiness for independence.
Great stuff. And perhaps follow on from that, Teresa, will post-16 education for SEN pupils, will there be a variety of courses like hospitality, dance and drama? Quite a detailed question.
Yeah, but lovely, because in it says, you know, will we be able to think about the needs of a range of children, young people, and be able to really think about what is it that's going to light somebody's fire. And I think, you know, from what we know about our young people is they do want to access a range of opportunities, and they want those opportunities to be varied, and we want that too. So there's a huge amount of capacity on site to do that, and I think that that's the level of, when we talk about centre of excellence, we're thinking about that level of variety as well. So yes, Matt.
Great stuff, thanks. And perhaps the next question for Mark. So what about all the children in mainstream struggling and no suitable alternatives, so they're being traumatised by having to stay in there when they need a specialist setting, or will it just be for high need pupils, or will it be mixed need? Are you able to give us a clue what the thinking is on that, Mark?
Yes, absolutely. The purchase of St Mary's and using that as a school going forwards is absolutely part of that wider thinking about how do we meet needs of children across the entire county. So we are talking with our school leaders about how do we improve what goes on in mainstream schools for children with SEN. We're talking with our special school heads about how they can support, how they can work with us to develop that better offer in mainstream. Equally, we're having discussions across the county with those schools that host units, talking about what do you do, how does that work, and where does that fit into our bigger strategy for SEN across the county. The specialist settings, those things which are special schools and other places, absolutely we want to make sure that the children who need that can go to those settings, that we are doing every piece of work at every level to make sure that where there is a need, we meet that first of all at the lowest level of need, so we're not escalating need over time, but secondly working with the system to make sure that in every sense we are allowing children to be as successful as they possibly can wherever they are placed. And, you know, genuinely where there are challenges, we're willing to address those. So working with the whole sector to make sure that the best education for our Dorset children is what they get, wherever that might be.
Great stuff. Thanks very much, Mark. Teresa, I'm going to come back to you because I know this is one of your subjects that you're quite interested in. There's a question here about, will the previous school's commitment to sustainable energy sources be carried forwards? And I know there's quite a bit of equipment on site that comes across with the site, but maybe you could talk through that issue.
Thanks, Matt. I think, like as with lots of Dorset residents and Dorset families, it's something that we really strongly are ambitious to be as green as we possibly can, and that's not easy in such a complex premises. But there are some real opportunities already available there. There's already a degree of solar farming going on site. There's some solar panels on lots of the new buildings, and there's some solar panels just in the fields. So we want to see that continue, and we'll make sure that we negotiate the best deal for Dorset Council with that too, and make sure that we keep that footprint going. We're also really keen to make good use of the landscape space there. So there was a whole range of larch planting that has happened on the school, and lots of that, as you'll appreciate, has died back. So we're really keen to look at a tree planting opportunity there for really replanting some of the more deciduous varieties and thinking about the more kind of long-lasting really legacies around some of that. And then making sure as we go forward that everything that we can do to make the building as ecological as possible, we do. And obviously making those opportunities with our children and young people there would be great. Fork to plate, that kind of, the growing food and using that in the cooking, and having some of those opportunities which we know not everybody has an opportunity to do on a day-to-day basis, but the space there allows for that. So really keen to, as soon as we have concluded the consultation, to begin those conversations with local residents and local families about, well, what are the kind of ecological opportunities for us in their school.
Great stuff. Thanks, Teresa. And this one also might be one for you, or maybe for Mark. There's somebody, Liz, thank you. You said, I'm really excited about this plan for SEN pupils. As a parent in Dorset to a child with a learning disability, this is such a much needed school. Will the school offer post-16 SEN courses with qualifications for hospitality or drama and dance, so our children can look to gain employment? Obviously, that's quite specific in its nature, but maybe Mark, you could give some thinking, because I know it's a question we've batted around in the project group.
Yes, absolutely, Matt, and I might take another one as well, if I may.
Yep.
Genuinely, the questions about the curriculum in the school, that's something that we're really keen to see the best use of what is an amazing site. The options on that particular site range from, as Teresa's just said, outdoor opportunities through the whole range of things that are in a school's curriculum. There are outstanding facilities there for art, for drama, for dance, right across the school curriculum, and as well looking at those opportunities for our young people beyond what would be the traditional borders of the school day. So talking about those things that are about clubs, every opportunity. I think when you've got a site which is so special and brings with it so much outdoor space and so many opportunities, it would be wrong to not capitalise upon those. And I'm sure however we end up running the school, the full curriculum for our children is what we're looking for.
Brilliant, thank you, Mark. So I think you've picked up the question by Marie as well, who's underneath that. There's a question at the bottom that says, when would the school be looking to be opened, please? Now that's a big question, I suspect, and obviously at this stage we're just in consultation mode and we've just got a preferred option. But Teresa, what's the thinking?
Yeah, thanks, Matt. So we're obviously really keen to bring on more school places just as quickly as we can, but we also want to get it absolutely right for the first stage of opening, and it will be a phased opening. We won't be opening on day one with all of our children, and we'll be increasing those numbers as we go through. That ambition means that we've already been starting to think about dates probably towards the end of this year. If it was to be an independent school, that school can open at different times to other schools. So we can often open, say, if we didn't open in September, we could open in January. And that's the sort of level of quick turnaround we're looking for, because as I've said previously, the actual building capacity is absolutely there. And, responding, if I might, to the question about siblings, yes, absolutely. One of the key messages we hear from our families all the time is that sometimes my children can't access the same play opportunities, the same short break opportunities, and is that not something that's not possible? It seems very possible to us, so keep us challenged on that. Our ambition is that your children will be able to access similar play opportunities to their siblings, or certainly alongside each other, and we do recognise that siblings are often young carers and in and of themselves need those sorts of support services, so we are considering that in our plans too. Yeah.
Brilliant. Thanks very much indeed, Teresa. And these are some fantastic questions already coming through with, and I just ask that you do replicate these through the consultation, because it's really important that we get those and capture them. But I've got a question here that says, in our experience, ASC PDA is not properly understood in Dorset local authority, particularly highly academic children that mask. I would like to see Dorset work with actually autistic individuals and national experts. Will this happen? Well, obviously that's subject to our preferred option going forward. So this is used as a school, but Mark's on screen, so I think he's up to answer that question.
Thank you, Matt. Absolutely, it gives an opportunity, doesn't it, when you create something new, to bring in those people that absolutely know that part of the business. So as we develop up the range of needs that we're going to cater for on this particular site, and working across Dorset with our excellent special school heads as well, what we're looking for is to make sure that the provision we bring forward is perfectly able to meet need, and that's done from a position of understanding. So clearly hearing there the voice in the question, which is one around co-production. Absolutely, we want our parents and our carers involved in that process, but also our young people, wanting to make sure that whatever we are developing for meeting whatever type of need we bring forwards, it's absolutely about making sure people are happy that we are doing the best we possibly can. If there are issues that people have felt within Dorset that they'd like to send through to me to pick up, more than happy to pick those up as well. We want to listen and hear the voice of our children, young people and families right through everything that we do.
Brilliant. And Vic's coming up, so I don't know whether Vic wanted to say something in response to that, or you're up for the next question.
Yeah, I can add, actually. I think the particular query there in terms of getting the expertise, we have fantastic expertise in our special schools who deliver an outreach service to support children and young people in mainstream settings, in particular around this, because we understand some of the challenges that in terms of pathways and getting support for diagnoses in these particular areas. So we work very closely with our special schools, and we will continue to work very closely with them on this particular proposal should it become a school. And I think that's where we draw that expertise from, alongside other professionals in this field and with our CCG partners.
Great, thanks very much indeed, Vic. So I've got another question from Marie here. Would this site be considered for ASC students with a CCM base, as we have no secondary options in our area? These were stopped. Asking as a parent, looking at our son's transition. Don't know whether you want to pick that up, Vic, or somebody else. Mark's coming back on screen.
Yeah, more than happy to pick that one up, Matt. Definitely, because what we have to do is to work out the right transition for every child who is within our SEN system, don't we? And as a parent, quite clearly, the question always remains, what next for my child? And so we will, as soon as we know what sort of school, we'll be working with families, young people, to work out who might be suitable for this particular school. But even then, looking across everybody in the county, what we always want to do is to step into that space that says, what's the right thing for your child? So if there are concerns and there are things that you feel feeding through that annual review process are important for you, make sure those are within that annual review, but also where there are difficulties, talk to us, because absolutely we want to understand what next for every family.
Great stuff, thanks Mark. And there's another couple of questions for you here. I'll link them together. One just says transport to schools is so difficult. Will school transport be available?
Yeah, more than happy to pick those up. We have obviously a statutory duty to provide for transport to school. We do that for all children in Dorset, whatever the destination and need. Home to school transport is what we are in the business of doing. The wider piece is about making sure that the right provision in the right place is available, so we minimise transport. We understand that for some of our young people, they do have to travel too far, and we don't want them to be travelling in buses or in taxis or in minibuses for long periods of time. The more we can do within our boundaries of the county, the more our young people we're keeping within our boundaries, and the more options that we have across the board, the shorter the journeys can be, and that's really important to us.
Brilliant. Thanks very much indeed. So we're coming towards the end of this session. We've got two or three questions left. So I've got one here. What about Respite offering? This site seems ideal to offer that within the space. Teresa, do you want to comment on that?
Thanks, Matt. Yes, so as I've said before, I think there is an opportunity for us to think about short breaks, about respite. You're right, there is a real opportunity within this for us to be able to think about how we can meet those children and families' needs. Even it may well be that because of the opportunities that the site offer, is that the respite doesn't have to just be for children. It could be a family respite arrangement too. So that is a really unusual opportunity for us to have, but this particular site gives us that. So that's a real possibility. And Matt, I think we may have had a question about the ISP requirement. So happy to hand to Vic for that, in terms of we've done lots of work around this and probably picking up the mapping of home addresses too. So Vic, if you could just talk about the kind of research we've already undertaken that underpins our strategy, that would be helpful.
Yeah, of course. So we've started to look at that, the demographic of our cohorts of children and young people with special educational needs, and where they're situated, and they are spread across Dorset, so we do understand that they're not centralised in a particular area, but we do believe that in particular, if you look at the number of children and young people who are going kind of further, so not so much the kind of just across the county border, but actually much further than that, this would certainly serve the need around those children and young people, and potentially alleviate some of the pressure on our existing special schools, so that we can spread some of that capacity. So I'll just give you a bit of a flavour there. We do have more detailed data which we can publish later, but that gives you a bit of an idea.
Great stuff. Thanks very much indeed, Vic. So we've got a flurry of last few questions. So I've got one. Will our young people already settled in out of county schools be expected to leave where they're settled? Sometimes out of county is actually their closest school, just across the county border, depending on where they live. And I've got three faces in front of me. I'm going to look to one to wave at me. As who would like to take that question? Teresa and Mark are both waving. So I'm going to go to Teresa first, and I'm sure there's one for you after this, Mark.
Thank you. I really want to reassure all of our families, this is not any way going to be something that's going to happen. We are not going to in any way force children who are settled in their schools to be moving somewhere else. I can't say that strongly enough. This is about getting to the best opportunity for schools, for children where we can. Now, it's not to say that people may not make their own decisions and choices with us and in conversation with us. And I've seen a few particular personal inquiries in the Q&A, and so please do make contact with Mark Blackman around your personal circumstances. But we will not be operating a policy of enforcing children out of their present settled school to be back in St Mary's.
Okay. Great stuff, thank you. And I'm just reading through to see which questions we haven't already answered in the funnels. I can see there's some responses by you as moderator, Teresa. There is a final couple of questions. One, I'm going to finish with this one because it's coming up towards the hour mark. And if somebody could answer the other one in the chat bar, do you have a clear cohort in mind for this school? And will you change cohort if this process shows you the public thinking differently to you? So if somebody could answer that, that would be helpful. But the final question from Marie says, how do you plan on including our young people and their feelings on what they feel is needed? And as Teresa has, I think, helpfully articulated, we're really keen to hear from you as parents and carers of people, young people, but really important also the young people's voices heard as well. Teresa, do you want to pick up and respond to that question?
Thank you, Matt. Yep, that's really helpful. So we're really keen to get a group of young people together and as large a group as possible. One of the opportunities about this way of working is that we can speak to more people all the time, and we are. So we want to hear from our young people. We want to facilitate those conversations. We want to facilitate them communicating with us in whatever way they can. about their needs. We also know that many of you and DPCC and our special school heads are great advocates for what they know our children need and want from us. So really keen to engage with young people directly and also with their advocates, of whom we're having lots and lots of conversations. So we know that they'll help us design it in the best possible way.
Brilliant, thanks very much indeed. And we had one question earlier about timing of opening and naming us for school years, and I think Mark's going to respond to that. It's very difficult for us to forecast that at the moment at this stage of a consultation, because we're really looking to hear what people have got to say about the full use of the site at this stage. I think I'm going to draw this conversation to a conclusion in terms of the questions that we've got. We've come to, looks like we're coming to the end of that. I would just encourage you to respond to the consultation, to put those questions and those thoughts that you've got in the consultation process, and to thank you for taking time out, as Teresa said at the beginning, of a busy part of your evening. For those of you watching after the event, I hope you will also feel able to, having listened to this, make some contributions to the consultations. In a really good and really helpful session, and I know everybody who's on here, even if they've not been answering questions, has been listening really carefully to what you've been asking and to the responses that have been given by the members of the project team. So can I thank you ever so much for your time, and have a really good evening, and look forward to seeing your responses in the consultation process. Thanks very much, everybody. Good night.